Zai Whitaker is one of the founders of the Crocodile Bank in Chennai. She is a managing trustee. More importantly for us, she is an educator and she has written very many books, especially for children, and it scans the entire range. She writes poetry, she writes essays, she writes anecdotes. I mean, it's just beautiful reading her work. And personally, I know that my own children, I read a lot from her books when they were young. And today I'm proud to say when my kids see anyone who is not a human, they are as compassionate to them as they are to humans. And a big credit would go to you, ma'am. It's, you know, the way you talk about reptiles and turtles and snakes, things that we normally are taught are yuck or scary, but you humanize them so much. So we are very, very pleased that she's agreed to do a fairly informal session with all of you. I'm hoping many of you will have a lot of questions for her. She's with us for as long as we need her, but not more than 1 hour. So with that, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Very pleased to meet you and to have you here. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my childhood. And I was very lucky in the childhood that I had, though at that time I didn't think so. I grew up in a family of naturalists, including a very dedicated and devoted ornithologist. You know what an ornithologist is? What is an ornithologist? Someone who studies birds. So my uncle Salim was an ornithologist, and so was my father. And very often when we would rather have been with our friends over the weekend or playing outside, we were taken off bird watching. And that created some problems for us. And one of those problems is in this book, Saleh Mamu and Me. Now, the advantage of writing a very thin, skinny book is that you can read the whole thing in one shot. So that's what I'm going to do for you for a start. Am I clear? I was about 6 years old and a bit confused. I had a famous uncle. My friends and cousins and teachers, my whole world said, "Wow, how lucky you are to have such a famous uncle." And I'd smile and try to look lucky, but I had a smile outside and a frown inside, because I had a problem, and not a small one either. Saleh Mamu was a bird expert. This kind of expert is called an ornithologist. He had written so many books on birds that I thought his pen would run out of ink. He was a superstar in the world of birds and animals. He was friends with kings and queens and many important people. Nehru and Indira Gandhi. And he went to London and Germany and all those kinds of places. He knew big, big people and went to big, big places, said everyone. He walked thousands of miles every year in forests and on beaches and on mountains and in valleys, studying birds. He would look at them for hours and sometimes shoot one to find out what it actually was. Thank goodness they don't need to do this to people, said my sister, without shooting them. So what was my problem? Having a famous bird uncle should be fun, right? Well, it wasn't. It was the opposite of fun. It was total unfun. My problem was that it wasn't just Salemamu who was a bird star. My whole family were bird experts. My father and mother and brother and sister and even our cook, Paul. They flipped pages of Salemamu's bird book and found the bird they'd seen in the garden or park or forest or on a trip somewhere. Ah, they'd shout in delight, orange-headed ground thrush, and I felt very left out. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to recognize the song of the oriole and the fork tail of the drongo and the difference between the male and female paradise flycatcher. But I wanted to become an expert without paying attention because school took away all the attention that I had. I didn't have any left for other things. This made me so sad, but I couldn't talk about it. Years passed. I grew taller, and so did my problem. The worst part was I began to hate birds. And the birding trips came thick and fast. My weekends were finished because Salemamu began to take groups of bird lovers to nature parks outside Bombay, a huge treat for ornithologists. You had to sign up at the Bombay Natural History Society. I think my father must have signed up for all of us for our whole lives. From then on, my only Sunday memory is being woken up at 5 o'clock, it felt like midnight, and being told to hurry up and wash up and get ready and brush hair and go to the car. Salemamu's large blue jeep would be lurking at the junction, filled with the Bandra birders. We lived in Andheri. Other birders would arrive from different parts of the city, all looking excited and determined to come first, which meant having the longest bird list. We were the Andheri birders. The Dadar birders never brought a proper picnic, but just ate whatever the rest of us offered them. When Paul prepared our picnic, he'd put in some extra bread and jam sandwiches and wink at me. You give to the Dadar people, he would say. When a birder asked, "What's that?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say, "I don't know." No one likes to say they don't know. So I thought up a good plan. And it worked really well. I pretended I hadn't seen the bird at all. Where, I'd say, even if it was a huge bird like a peacock and it was sitting right in front of my nose. It worked really, really well for a while. Then one day, Salemamu saw me in action and got worried. He spoke to my mother. She didn't see the pipit that was sitting right in front of her. She may need glasses. And so my pet name at school changed to Owlet. I had the most ugly pair of spectacles in class. She doesn't need glasses, the eye doctor kept saying to my mother. Of course she does. What do you know? We always knew best. Wearing the largest glasses in Bombay, I no longer had an excuse. The next bird watching trip was coming up, closer and closer. I had a sleepless night. I imagined every kind of possibility. In one series of snapshots, a flock of huge, obvious, common birds landed right in front of me, and I didn't know what they were. Everyone's faces were embarrassed, from forehead to chin, even their noses. I got out of bed to shake off the fears. I began dressing in the inky darkness, and I was ready by 5. Soon there was a bustle in the kitchen. Wonderful, wonderful, I heard my mother murmur to my father. I knew she'd become interested in birds. Imagine, up and ready so early, makes me so happy. I thought. And off we went, the others sharing lists of must-sees and might-sees, and I mentally listing hope not to seize, such as bay-backed shrikes, because I always thought they were tree pies. My mother took my glasses so she could clean them with her sari pallo. Ouch. Perhaps I should go lame today, I decided, and sit on the culvert and writhe in pain and miss the entire thing. But that meant missing the sandwiches as well. If you were in pain, I mean properly, you couldn't show too much interest in food. But God looked after me that day. I didn't have to do a thing. When we got to the forest trail an hour later, and the what's that, what's this started, and I began to say, where, my mother looked at me in sympathy and cried, oh, I forgot your glasses in the car. I cleaned them and then I left them on the seat. How silly of me. Poor Zai. But poor Zai was delighted. The problem had been solved. Salemamu even held my hand so I wouldn't trip and fall over fallen deadwood and roots. And soon after that, everything changed. I told Amma my eyes were fine, but not my brain. I told them my bird name problem. I can't believe this, said my sister. So what if you're not interested? It just doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't, said my father. Poor old Zai, said my brother. You've been miserable for nothing. Here, have a treat. And he whacked me with his cricket bat. I love you, even if you can't tell a cormorant from a darter. I still remember the lightness of that day. And then a funny thing happened. I began to love those bird mornings. It dawned on me that you could love birds without knowing their names. I began to love their colors and crests and wattles and plumes and all the other extras. They were pretty stylish, I thought. And then, when I was about 6 inches taller, but still short for my age, something amazing happened. We were on a high cliff. the Andheri, Bandra and Dadar birders were watching a pair of soaring raptors in the sky below us. "Shikra," shouted Andheri. "Oh, you fool, it's harriers," said Bandra with an insulting gesture. Dadar shouted some other ignorant name and got laughed at by both Andheri and Bandra. Salemamu was on his way up. He would know for sure. I had been watching the way the wings dipped and turned, dipped and turned. Isn't it, could it be the black-winged kite? I said hesitantly. "It is," said a croaky voice from behind me, and Salemamu's rough hand landed on my back. I squinted into the distance, trying not to look victorious. So that was my adventure as a child with birds and Salemamu. And can you tell me, any of you children here, why I initially hated birds and bird watching? Why did I not like it? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a choice in the matter. I had to go. What else? Yeah, that I had to name a bird to know it. That's a good way of putting it, actually. And that sort of goes for all wildlife, right? You can appreciate a bird or any animal without knowing exactly what the name is. But I was in a family where this was very important. You had to make lists of the birds that you saw. You had to know the name. You had to recognize it. You had to recognize the call of the bird. And so I felt a lot of pressure because my uncle was so famous. So was my father, as a matter of fact, as bird watchers. And I was a loser. I didn't know anything. And I still know very little, by the way. So that was so we grew up with a lot of birds and bird watching around us. And after college, I moved to Chennai and I married somebody who was a snake expert. So I went from being with a bird expert who was making me feel lousy about birds to a snake expert, and I felt lousy about snakes because I didn't know much about them at all. But I became very fascinated with snakes and, in fact, with all reptiles. And I started working at the snake park. Initially, have you been to the snake park in Chennai? Okay, one person has. Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay. And then we started an organization called the Crocodile Bank, because by that time, our 3 species of crocodiles in India were going extinct. So our plan was to breed them in captivity and put them back into the wild. So my focus shifted, or the focus of my life shifted from winged creatures to scaly creatures. And I found myself getting even more interested in reptiles than in birds. Also, one advantage was that there are fewer snakes, so there's a good chance of knowing their name and something about them. So I felt less ignorant, actually. So this book, Cobra in My Kitchen, is named for an experience that we had Actually, we had many experiences because my husband used to keep some snakes in the house in those days. So at one point, there was a cobra in the kitchen, and at another point, there was a sea snake in the washroom, which had been put in a bucket. And when I said, you know, it's going to get out, he said, no, 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 it can't get out. And sure enough, it did. So I went to the washroom in the morning, and there was this sea snake sitting there, which is one of the most venomous snakes that we have. Then another time it was a banded crate, and then when we were in Papua New Guinea, a python escaped from one of his cages and was sitting in the window. So a lot of adventures, and I started writing about these experiences that I had. And so I'm going to read you a little piece from this book. Okay, so this is about, so one of the things that was really exciting for me moving to Chennai was that I got to meet and work with the Irula Adivasis in Tamil Nadu. So they are basically snake catchers, and they used to catch snakes for the snake industry until until it was banned in 1971, I think, or 72. But in the 1960s, when the snakeskin industry was at its height, and India was exporting snakeskins to places like Japan, Italy, I think, France, Germany, Tamil Nadu itself was sending 10 million snakeskins a year. So that is 10 million snakes were being killed every year for the skins. And that is what the Irulas were doing. That was their main livelihood. Apart from catching snakes, they were also catching other animals in the scrub forest to eat. And one of those animals was rats. And they still catch and eat rats and mice. Another was termites, because termites during the pre-monsoon period where they are swarming from the nest or from their termite mound, it's easy to catch lakhs of them in one night. And it's good protein. And it's good tasting as well. They taste like maybe little peanuts, and they're usually fried or roasted and eaten. So I was very lucky that to be able to go out into the forest with the Irulas as they caught rats, they caught snakes. But I found one of the most exciting things was their termite hunting. So this piece is about termites. We all know what termites are, right? We're on safari. The wind blows, the moon slides out from behind dark gray clouds. Tell me if I make a mistake, okay? It disappears into another cloud tunnel. There's excitement in the air, as there is on every safari. But it's not rhino or elephant we're after, but something just a little bit smaller, termites. After an hour of walking, I feel a bit tired, but of course would never admit it. Dore, our Irula companion, pokes bushes, peers at the ground, and looks up at the sky to gauge the weather, like a good hunter-gatherer. He is looking for a special kind of puttu, or termite mound. It is a meter-high mud castle surrounded by scrub bushes. The last one, which he rejected, looked just like this one. Why did he choose this and not that? Because that one wasn't ready, he says. He's not in a talking or explaining mood, so we shut up. I suppose what he means is that the termites were not ready to swarm or fly out into the world. Have you ever been in a room during a termite swarm? They crash against lights, fall into food, and generally take over the place. The next morning, their lacy wings have to be swept up. Termite swarms usually occur on cloudy nights before the rains. For us city folk, it can be a nuisance. We don't particularly like insect visitors, especially in such large numbers. However, for the people of the Irula tribe, it means snack time. Lightly roasted termites are an Irula treat. They are also very nutritious, powerful pellets of protein. There's yet another plus point for termites. They are not protected animals, and you can't go to jail for eating termites. Several other animals the Irulas traditionally eat are listed in the Wildlife Protection Act. These include monitor lizards and several species of turtles and tortoises that they used to eat. However, rats and termites, two major items on their menu, are still off the list and so can be legally on the table. Dore takes a long, hard peek inside the termite mound through one of the tiny holes. He likes what he sees. He doesn't quite lick his lips, but almost. He empties his jam-packed pockets and finds his magic seed. Lighting a small... Have I lost you? He roasts the seed over it. It is then rubbed against a stone and powdered. This seed dust is sprinkled on the puttu, on top of the puttu, and Dore sits down to wait. Waiting is a large part of the hunter-gatherer's life, but us townies are not so good at it. We look at our watches, we raise eyebrows, we fidget, we make faces at one another. Bored already? Asks Dore as he smiles. Feeling very small, we stop acting like spoilt city creatures. 10 minutes later, he takes another peek. Come and see, he says. Squinting into the small mud canyons, I see a lot of movement. Dore's trick has worked. The seed is supposed to smell like rain and fool the termites into swarming or coming out of the mound. Well, there sure is some frantic activity going on inside the mound. Will they come out soon, we ask. Wait, says Dore. So we wait some more, trying to sit as still as him. Yet another peep, and Dore has a big smile on his face. He takes up his crowbar and starts digging. He digs a hole near the puttu. In it, he places an old kerosene tin that he has brought along. Over the opening of the tin, he makes a bridge with 2 sticks. And on the stick bridge, he puts a small oil lamp. This has also come out of his generous pocket. He lights the lamp, and we all sit down to wait some more. A few minutes later, we hear a sound. It's a new kind of sound, a mixture of bees buzzing and faraway traffic. But it's neither. It's the termites. They've got the green signal from the boss, the queen, to leave the mound since the weather is just right. Dore's seed really has them well fooled. Soon a brown trickle of insects pours out of a hole. Within seconds, the puttu is covered with termites, all happily exploring the big wide world. There are termites in the air, termites on the bushes and ground, and termites on us. But most of them make a beeline for the light and fall into the tin. Soon the tin is full and we empty it into a gunny sack. By the end of the safari, we have a sack full of high-protein food. Dore and his friend pop a few live termites into their mouth, but we decide to wait until the wings are removed and they are roasted. Scaredy cats. To eat them alive, you have to know what you're doing because they can give you a good bite on the tongue. There is a rustle in the dry grass. The termite feast is popular. A big black scorpion has invited himself and starts on the food immediately without waiting to be invited. His table manners aren't that great. He's wolfing the food down the way you're not supposed to. And now, here comes a huge bullfrog, almost the size of a turtle. He proves to be another greedy pig. He scoops up the termites in his mouth and leaves the wings dangling on his chin like a false mustache. We laugh till our sides ache. Soon he is too full to move. Do you know the feeling? And just sits there helplessly. After a long time, he manages to waddle away into the bushes. He looks as if he never wants to see another termite again. Know the feeling? I do. Not with termites, but with cake, ice cream, mangoes, and chocolates. And in Hyderabad with kebabs as well. The next day, Dore brings us a small newspaper cone with roasted termites. Sorry, there's so little left, he says. We gobbled up quite a bit last night. At first, we are not sorry there's so little. We are not sure we can finish even what there is. But as we start munching, we wish there was. Forget peanuts and popcorn. This is the real thing. So, you can imagine coming from Bombay, a city girl, a college student from Bombay, living a very city life. Here I was in Chennai with these Irula hunter-gatherers. They're bringing in sackfuls of rats and termites and, eating all this weird maggots. And so it was a fascinating transition for me. And I found myself writing. I had already started writing in school and college. Some very bad poems, some very bad stories, and some very bad essays. But when I got to Chennai, there was a need at the snake park to tell people about reptiles and how important they were. Do you know why reptiles are important? Yeah, very important for the ecological balance, and especially now for our country because they eat millions of rats every year. And scientists are now assessing or, guessing that about 60 to 70% of our food grains is eaten up by rats every year. So that is both the stored grain in silos in storerooms, as well as the standing grain. So you can imagine what a huge loss it is for the country. So snakes are much better than rat traps because they can go right into the burrows, find the snake, catch it, and eat it. And it's not poison, it's not poisonous for the soil. So I became very fascinated with all these things related to reptiles, especially to snakes. And I was really living a dream life because I was surrounded by people doing such adventurous things. One year I went off to the Andaman Islands to catch snakes and bring them back for the snake park. Another time we went to a country called Papua New Guinea in the Pacific where my husband was working on a crocodile project. And if I have time now, I'd like to read you a little bit about that experience. But before that, are there any questions or comments? That's a very good question to which there isn't any answer because we haven't got the number studies for snakes or any other reptiles. Now, to get something like a tiger census is easy because, you use collars, you use telemetry, but that's not all. That is very obvious is that snakes are moving more and more into the cities because the cities are where they used to live, right? We've taken over their environment. So we have to learn to live with snakes more and more. And we still have like 50 to 60,000 people dying of snake bite in the country every year. So it is a problem. There's too many snakes, but there are not enough snakes, if you know what I mean, because we just don't have the habitat anymore. It's actually like any other animal. I mean, look at tigers, we're happy that we have so many tigers. It's a good thing the population has gone up, but where is the habitat for them to live? And there's more and more conflict with humans and elephants, tigers, leopards, snakes. Yeah. Sorry? I'm afraid, and I'm very smart because I let the others do the dangerous work. So at the snake park, I would very often handle the harmless snakes, the non-venomous snakes, because it's important to show people what they look like. But I didn't get too involved with the venomous ones. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, so I think the most practical thing to do with snakes is to learn the common venomous snakes, which are basically four. So once you know those four species, the cobra, the crate, especially in your area here, these are the four, the saw-scaled viper, the Russell's viper, then you see a snake, and if it's not one of the big four, as we call them, then you're fairly safe. But unless you're 100% sure that it's a non-venomous keelback or vine snake or something, you should not tangle with it at all. And usually if you just leave them alone, they go their own way. Yeah. So out of 350 species in the country, there's about 50 that are venomous. But of those 50, it's only 4 that are common enough that we need to be worried about them. So then I started writing more and more about reptiles, and when we were in Papua New Guinea is known for the taipan. Have you heard of the taipan, which is known as like the most venomous snake in the world? And when we went there, Rom's, my husband's, big wish was to see a taipan. My big wish was not to see a taipan, of course. His wish came true soon after we got there, because the government allotted us a house next to the Moitaka croc farm, his base, which is prime taipan habitat, something that I wasn't too thrilled about. Word had spread at Moitaka that the master belong India, Emmy like snake tumas true, that is pidgin English for this new master from India likes snakes very much. And if anyone came across a snake, they should let him know. And a few mornings later, John Seba came running up the steps of our house to announce that he'd just seen a big pella snake on one of the grassy trails leading out of the farm towards a stream. We set off with him. There was an initial disappointment, no snake where John Seba had seen it, but then as we prepared to leave, there was a streak of black lightning heading towards thick vegetation across an open patch of ground. That memory bite is still so fresh in my mind. I was enough of a herpetologist wife to know that Rom would want to preempt it from getting into the forest, and sure enough, he had leapt across the stream. Sensing danger, the snake whipped into the bushes, but Rom was able to leap forward and grab the tail. I knew it was a taipan, and, adrenaline gushing, watched as it lunged at him, mouth open. As Rom was to relate, I had dropped the snake hook in the jump and needed it desperately right now. It was either let go and lose the snake or hang on and take a chance. A big chance, because there was no taipan antivenom in Papua New Guinea. Fortunately, after years of watching me in tight spots, Zai had become an experienced assistant and leapt across the stream to retrieve the snake hook. She quickly pressed this into my hand, and I nodded my thanks, not taking my eyes off the snake. The next stage of the episode is carved even deeper into my memory board. As I stepped back, the snake launched itself towards Rom, who swept his arm back to unbalance it and used the snake hook to block the open mouth strike. It turned out to be one of the most heart-stopping interactions I've seen between a snake and Rom, and there are many, including those with king cobras. But while kings and most other snakes just want to escape, taipans often have other plans. This one was long, irritated, quite understandably, and made repeated thrusts at its attacker. One eye on Rom to make sure he was unbitten, I helped John Seba rig the snake bag in its frame. The contraption, like a butterfly net, makes snake bagging a safer operation. By this time, the taipan seemed to be getting tired. Phew, I thought. To return to Rom's words, still keeping my eyes on the snake, I gently swung the snake hook around to where Zai held the short pole. She lowered the open mouth of the dark blue snake bag to the ground, and I guided the snake towards it. The taipan, relieved no doubt to find a dark hiding place, began to slide in. I let go. It shot in with a burst. Zai quickly twirled the handle to shut the bag. So that answers your questions. This is the kind of thing I used to do, is stand at a safe distance and help him to close the snake bag. Or sometimes be the photographer and also be at a safe distance. Yeah, so these are some of the adventures that we had. And so my natural history writing started with birds, went on to reptiles, and with reptiles started with educational texts, articles, and stories. But now I find myself moving more and more into fiction about animals. So I did a book about a family of mongooses who had to move out of the rice fields and ended up in the city, and how they adapted to city life. Just like we do, a lot of animals, leopards is again a good example, because we read every day practically in the newspapers or watch a video on our phones about some leopard that has entered a school or a shop or some human establishment, because that's what we've done to the world. We've just converted it all into human spaces. And humans bring rats, right? Because we throw trash everywhere. So rats love human spaces and snakes love rats. So it's a really good, yeah. So did I read accurately? You were following in the book? Yeah. Good.
This question is about anti-venoms. What we have here is, the big four, as you just said. The anti-venom is made using venom from the big four species, okay? But then you just said that there are like more than 60 or so venomous snakes in India. So what about snake bites from the other species of snake?
So as I said, we don't really have to worry about the other snakes are the venomous snakes because they're either living in habitats where we don't regularly go, such as rainforests
Yeah.
or mangrove forests. So that is one category out. Um, the other is, we have a lot of species of pit vipers, for example, which are venomous, but not venomous enough to kill us. So you'd have a pretty bad time if you got bitten by a pit viper, but you wouldn't die.
Because we are more and more encroaching into, snake territories
Oh,
everywhere.
definitely.
That is the
We're
worry.
encroaching into the territory of all wildlife in a big way. And we're seeing the results,
Wanted to understand on the Irula tribe.
Sorry?
The Irula tribes, they are, of course, earlier the connection was more for, I think so it was connected commercially, also in various forms of how they use these animals, how they're connected to their lives and livelihoods. Given now many of these species are protected and this, also, but they also form a part of this connection, right? Now they can also be the saviors of some of these species, or how is that really, is there any efforts being put in that of Irula tribes?
So one thing with the Irulas was that we were part of a group of people who helped them to set up a venom center so that they're catching snakes for the venom instead of for the skins. And they're not killing them, but they're releasing them back into the wild after extracting the venom 4 times. It's not an ideal thing, but they need many more such schemes to be able to survive. And we're doing what we can, talking to the government about, things like housing and so on for them, but they're not in a very good space, no. Because the money from skins was huge. The only good thing, and I really thank the Lord for this, is that rats are not on the Wildlife Act, and so they can eat rats and they can eat termites. Also, very often when they go hunting for rats in rat burrows, and I've been with them rat catching, when they have found like 5 kilos of rice in one burrow. So then they get the rice as well as the rats from the burrows. But this is a question with all our Adivasi groups who are hunter-gatherers. What do? We haven't studied it enough. We haven't got into it in enough detail to be able to help them transition into, out of their traditional activities, which we have come and made illegal. So,
thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. I was just wondering, what do you find the most fascinating thing about snakes? You mentioned that you started liking birds by just looking at them, observing them, and their wings and all sorts of things. And I was wondering if there was something similar about snakes too that you find fascinating.
well, I find every opportunity to watch them fascinating. Recently I was in the Western Ghats and I saw some nests of female king cobras for the first time for me. And just the fact that an animal without arms and legs can create that nest, it's so absolutely mind-boggling. So then on the same trip, I saw a flying snake flying down from the trees. Very lucky to see that. So practically everything you see is just amazing. But just like with birds, I'm quite happy watching a very common bird like a babbler or a myna. Same with snakes, you know. I'm happy to watch a rat snake or a striped keelback. It doesn't have to be a king cobra or some exotic species. Nature is incredible, just whatever it is.